Well, howdy everyone. Today I'm taking a look at another of Canon's lenses that are just designed for mirrorless cameras. In fact, it's one of their kit lenses, the EF-M 18 to 55mm f3.5 to 5.6 IS STM. It will not fit on digital SLR cameras, only mirrorless. If you want to buy one of these new, then they seem to sell for about £200, which is a little extortionate. Go on eBay instead and pick up a used one for under £100. This is your typical standard zoom kit lens, the same focal length Canon have been using for years, going from a reasonably wide angle of 18mm and zooming in to a short telephoto 55mm. That's the full frame equivalent of 29 to 88mm. Like most kit lenses, it doesn't let in much light or give you very out of focus backgrounds. The maximum aperture is f3.5 at wide angle end, which quickly darkens to f5.6 as you zoom in. So you'll need to use quite high ISO levels on your camera if you're shooting indoors or in the dark. However, the lens does have very good image stabilization to help keep your still shots sharp and your handheld video looking smooth. Here's some footage with it turned off and now turned on. It's a very efficient and quiet implementation. Let's take a look at the lens's build quality then. It's a little bit of a step above Canon's normal kit lenses for digital SLR cameras. It's based on a metal lens mount and feels a little more solid and weighty than a normal kit lens. It's a dark gunmetal grey colour which looks quite attractive, and it's reasonably small with a 52mm filter thread. The zoom ring turns quite smoothly without any stickiness. The focus ring doesn't really feel the smoothest to turn, but it's a decent size. This is an STM lens, so its focus mechanism is fully electronic. When you're focusing manually with the camera turned on, the mechanism is fairly responsive. In autofocus mode, it focuses fairly quickly, accurately, and more or less silently. Overall, it's a bit of a cut above the norm for a kit lens. It looks good on the outside and handles very nicely. Let's see about image quality then. I've fitted it onto my 24MP Canon EOS M3, which should pose quite a challenge to it. We'll start at the widest angle of 18mm. At f3.5, we see reasonably good sharpness in the middle of the image, with good contrast, but just a hint of purple fringing. Over in the corners, we see things getting a little soft, but it's still a fairly clear picture. Stop down to f5.6 for improved sharpness and clarity, and at f8, the picture quality is quite good, and back in the middle of the image, also quite good. Let's zoom in halfway now to 28mm. The maximum aperture is now f4.5, and in the middle of the image we see fairly good resolution. The corners, again, are noticeably soft. Stop down to f5.6 for an improvement there, and down to f8 for reasonably good resolution. And after all that stopping down, the middle of the image has become pretty sharp too. And now, let's zoom all the way in to 55mm. Now the maximum aperture is f5.6. The middle of the image looks nice and sharp, a bit better than 28mm. Those corners, again, are a bit soft. Stop down to f8 and, as you'd expect, there's increased clarity and contrast in those corners, and sharpness seems quite good, although not quite pin sharp. Back in the middle there's a small improvement too. So overall, this is a very typical performance for a kit lens. No major flaws anywhere, thankfully, and it's reasonably sharp, but you do have to stop it down to f8 for its best performance. And on a 24MP camera, it never really reaches razor sharpness anywhere. Let's see then about vignetting and distortion. Canon cameras don't automatically correct for distortion, and as you can see, at a wide angle of 18mm, the lens shows quite a bit of it, although perhaps not more than average for a zoom lens. At f3.5, we also see heavy vignetting, darkness in the corners. However, if you turn on peripheral illumination on your camera, it will go away quite nicely. Once you've zoomed in to 28mm, that distortion has pretty much straightened out. At 55mm, we see just a little bit of pincushion distortion. So in terms of distortion and vignetting, there are no surprises here, as we witness a completely typical performance for a standard zoom lens. Let's see about close-up image quality. The lens can focus down to about 25 cm, again typical for a kit lens. At f5.6, the image is full of ghosting and low contrast, which makes everything look really soft. Stop down to f8 though for acceptable close-up image quality. When it comes to working against bright lights, we see quite a lot of flaring, either at the wide angle end or when you're zoomed in. And when it comes to bokeh, well, it's very hard to get an out of focus background with this lens in general. At wider angles, the bokeh is a little busy looking, but once you're zoomed in, it seems smooth enough. Overall, the EF-M 18-55mm is a kit lens that has better build quality than most, but basically average optics. You won't get the full benefit of a 24 megapixel camera by using this lens, but if it's stopped down to f8, then you will get pretty sharp pictures. It'll get you the shots you need.